медіа-центрі триває. Я дуже рада.
I am happy to welcome some of the journalists, activists, representatives of new political forces who are running for candidacy to the parliament. And they are in the list of 5 future parliamentary parties: Mustafa Nayem, Oleksandr Chernenko, Svitlana Zalishchuk, Serhiy Leshechenko, Vitaliy Shabunin, Vasyl Gatsko, Anatoliy Дерев'янко, Тетяна Чорновіл, Вікторія Сюмар, Володимир Петрович, Олексій Рябчин, Оксана Сироїд. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would request all of you to come here. I would like to mention that we have some new colleagues and some failed to be here, but during the press conference, each one will introduce. Then from your permission, I will start and I will say a couple of words. We are here to show that this is our attempt to renew the parliament. All these people who you see, there are 13 of us, and we will go, we are from 5 different forces, and will be running at this early parliamentary election. There are people from Petro, Poroshenko, Bloc, People's Front, Batkivshina, Samopomich, and Hromadians'ka Pozytsia. We want to fix this moment, that we go there as new people from new political forces, from different civil society initiatives, from journalism, and we would like to say that we will all work together. The objective of this press conference is to fix that these are our colleagues, our partners. In the future, we are planning to create interfaction parliamentary association and agree on certain principles, laws, and reforms for which we will take responsibility and will be working together. There will be discussions between us. Different factions will represent different viewpoints. Maybe we'll have some disagreements, some difficult moments. That is what is ahead of us. But we would like to state that these people who are here, they go with their values, with the initiatives that they've had for many years, with what we have been doing as new political forces and as journalists. So one by one, we'll take 1 minute each, one person 1 minute, 13 minutes of presentations, and after that we'll give all of you the opportunity to ask questions. First, Hromadians'ka Pozytsia, then Samopomich, then Batkivshina, then Народний фронт, and then Petro Poroshenko. Hromadians'ka Pozytsia. Good afternoon. We are the first ones because that was the first party that opened this right trend of inviting into the list the people from civil society. All of us know why we go to the parliament. We'll be doing what we have been doing before. For me, it's ensuring that corruption is punished, like the different new provisions which are to be introduced into the criminal code. We know what we will be doing it, and we were proving that with our actions before the election campaign, and we hope that we will continue to do what we have been doing. I am Oleksandr Derevyanko, Hromadians'ka Pozytsia. I would like to say that it is important that in the country for the first time there is this opportunity to have a social lift, and it's good that political forces are supporting the initiative and that new people are going into the parliament like that. The main task within the first months is to pass a law, a new legislation on elections, and also very important is the transparency of financing of political parties and reform of the civil service, because a lot of the reforms will be based on civil service. If the civil service is not reformed, we'll have no perspectives. All of us have become young politicians, but I am sure that the main task is for us in the parliament to continue to be citizens. I can tell it on my behalf that we will set the example of responsible leadership and the actions of civil society. And if we remain to be the citizens, if we are professional and responsible, then we have the chance to build up a new Ukrainian country, the country of well-being, and with the opportunities for people to get self-realized. Good afternoon. Democratic Alliance is what I represent. I know how difficult it is to approve certain decision, to leave behind the criticism of politicians, and to take the responsibility on yourself. And I would like to thank and express respect to all people from civil society who today approved this decision. Renewal of Ukrainian politics should take place, and that's Ukrainian way of how this finds its place in Ukraine. I would like to mention that in order for this renewal to take place, people who will be in the parliament have to take certain commitments. They need to do so that the scale of this renovation is much bigger. And that is why there are several tasks in the parliament, several draft laws which are put on the agenda. That's the law on elections and open lists, the law on openness and transparency of financing of political parties, and the law on transparency of media ownership. Natalia Sokolenko, Democratic Alliance. The understanding of this responsibility came to me before, because I joined the Democratic Alliance as a party in 2012. It's important to say that we are not theoreticians. Those who go from Democratic Alliance as well and other civic society activists, we are not just theoreticians. We just not only protest, but we know how to do many things. Like my own proof is public radio and reforms. I am not on Hromadians'ka radio now. I haven't been there for 2 weeks because I made this decision and I have to work. Then reanimation package of reforms. We also left this process, and I would like to request the civil society, the journalists and politicians, please stop hysteria. We are honest people, people of principle. If we say that we left these projects, we left them. If we say that we have become politicians, we have become politicians. So there are no threats for animation package of reforms or public radio, public television in their existence. Everything will be honest. And another proof. Despite the fact that the law doesn't demand that, does not demand publicizing our tax returns, all of us opened our tax returns. Thank you. Samopomich. Good afternoon. I am Oksana Serhiy. I am representing Samopomich. I am a lawyer who for more than 10 years have been working on ensuring the balance of powers in constitutions and the fair judicial system. So my aim in the parliament is to protect Ukrainian constitution from Putin aggression that threatens a lot when we are reviewing our constitution next. And secondly, to ensure the renewal of the judges and ensure fair judiciary in Ukraine. During the last half a year, I participated in the initiative reanimation package of reforms, and now we stopped our public activity, but in the future parliament we take responsibility to introduce the ideas which were developed jointly within this initiative. Ostap Jednak. I am also in the list of Samopomich. During the last 6 months, I was the coordinator, and I was involved into the working groups on innovation, economic reforms from the reanimation package of reforms. Now I stop this activity, and I take the responsibility in the future parliament to promote the ideas and the concepts and the draft laws which were developed as part of the reanimation package of reforms. I'm Ryabchin Alexei. I'm also I have always been the civil society activist, and for 6 months I have been working as a journalist. But I'm economist. I have my PhD from Donetsk University. I want to support this university in these difficult times. I also have the education, the degree from the British University. I work with young people. I know that there is a critical mass of people with European experience, with European education. This initiative, there are initiatives, professional government and RPR that work with the government, but we need to stimulate young people to go to civil service, not to business. And together with these talented people, will be forming professional government, professional bodies of power to reform this country, anti-crisis reforms, economic reforms, innovation reforms, and so on. Good afternoon, Alona Shkrum. Just as Alexei, I'm from Batkivshchina, candidate to the parliament. I am from the Association of the Graduates of Foreign Universities, which is called Professional Government. I graduated at Sorbonne University. I'm a lawyer. Besides that, I'm a civil society activist, and I work on human rights. And the IDPs issue is what I'm working on. If the law on their rights and freedoms is not approved now, then this will be one of the first laws approved in the next parliament. And answering the question that we asked, why from this comfortable work you go to dirty politics, I believe that's time now when we should stop hoping that someone will do something for us. Only we can implement reforms, and the more of us is there, the better. Victoria Sumar, Narodny Front, People's Front. I look now at so many young faces, and I understand what we see now is in fact the second stage of Ukrainian revolution, the second stage of Maidan. The first stage showed the demand for changes, very specific changes, different approaches in politics, more trust in politics, renovation, social lifts. But today, this is when it starts working. That's the second stage. There should be the third stage also, when the systems are developed and created, the systems about how all these things work irrespective of people. Colleagues were saying what these systems mean. New law on elections, all these wonderful people, if they created the party of Maidan, but they wouldn't have money, they wouldn't have media resources, and many other things, they wouldn't get into the parliament. Now they will get there, and it is important for all of us together to make important steps so that these systems work. For that, we need new law on elections, financing political parties from the budget, because otherwise they will always depend on oligarchs. We need powerful social media, the law on transparency of media ownership, so that the oligarchs cannot own many TV channels. We need the register of ownership. Without that, there will be no fighting corruption. This is the whole set. And then this will be the third stage of Ukrainian revolution, which is able to change Ukraine, and we would like that to happen. And these are people who have mentioned what they have done in this life, and I want to give the floor to a person who has made the last impetus to the revolution, Mustafa, who has written the post from which everything started. Till the end of my life, this will continue. Thank you for that, but everything has been said already. Those who are there are people who had to set up their party, but basically with those who we went, That's a shame. Why do we lie to each other? I believe that the names that is so. We could have been waiting for 5 more years, and we could have been criticizing that they are all bad. I would be today saying that this is bad guy in this list, this guy is bad. Now we are on the places of those, we're holding the places of those who are criticized. What's my dream? Let's want in 5-7 years to be able to say that this day when many are disappointed by our choice, many wanted something else, so that these people say, we were mistaken, I would like this to happen. I would like that in some time we are able to create the list where these old people would like to join us and we wouldn't take them. I want that to happen. And I believe that we will be able to achieve it. And I don't look at that as an experiment. I don't think that let's try and then I will leave, they all bad. No, we'll go. It will be difficult for us. We'll be all in dirt. We'll be recognizing our mistakes, but we'll be making steps which our partners, so you will not like or we will not like, but our objective is we don't want to depend on this system in the future which we do not like. Let's try to do that. I hope to get your assistance, not support, not criticism, but from what I understood yesterday, it's scary to fail somewhere. So please criticize us, and the criticism will be a big support. Thank you. Mustafa, as a politician, is growing. Instead of 1 minute, he took 2 minutes. 1 minute is allowed in the parliament. But I understand that Mustafa will make a great politician. We go there because we want changes. We have some things that we have done. I believe I would be able to fight corruption if I'm given the task. We wouldn't create the concentration camps, but we need to punish the corruptionists, the law on lobbyism, the law on limitation of oligarchic clans on politics. These are the initiatives which we can initiate. Ukraine is pregnant with changes. We've been seeing it for a long time. But the final stage was the Maidan, and now, if we do not do that, we'll waste time. We'll try to do that. If we manage, we'll be happy. If not, we'll be trying to change it again and again, on this place, on the other place. Thank you. But we'll live with that. Oleksandr Chernenko. You know, in 1994, I was the volunteer, the observer on a polling station at the parliamentary elections. During the last 5 years till today, I was heading the organization, the Committee of Voters of Ukraine, and within these 2 or 3 years, I've seen many elections in Ukraine. I see how we committing same mistakes. Before each elections, we modify something, but still we are committing mistakes, and we have what we have. That is why our task today is to do something, not to commit mistakes. And my decision, I made the decision. So first of all, we'll be working on the new election legislation, administrative reform, local self-governance. That's what's of interest for me and what's close. I'm pleased that I'm not just by myself. There are not few of us, maybe not as many as we would like to see, but believe me, I don't believe that each one will give his card for voting to anyone else. He would rather eat up this card. So we'll start with that, and I hope we'll succeed. I am Svitlana Zalishchuk. I go to the parliament to implement 2 big things. First, implementing all the reforms that we have been drafting as RPR, and the second part is work with legislation connected to transparency, anti-corruption. And because I go from Chestnut movement, the initiative is still non-biased. non-political, and my colleagues continue to work at the national level and in different regions. I would like to say that's such a proverb. Ukrainians never lose the chance to lose the chance. And I believe this press conference is a good statement that we do not have the right to lose the chance. And everything that has been said for many years ahead, that's something for two convocations ahead. And in the end, I believe this is a big challenge. And I would like us to agree on one thing. The next elections, we need to have having new open lists with proportional systems so that there's transparent financing of parties and campaigns, and we need eventually introduce the budget funding of the election campaign so that we are not coming as part of the list of the parties which are financed by oligarchs, but we want to have real young forces which will create these social lifts for young people. Questions? Interfax Ukraine. Can anyone tell how you got into the list? Was that your initiative? Were you invited? And can you now give examples of when in some countries the journalists and the civil society activists would go to parliament and they would manage to change something? Vasyl, Mustafa, and Oleksandr. How we got there? In fact, a month ago, we got together, we decided that's our choice. Many of those who we got together were surprised that I can go with Serhiy. There was an idea to go as a team. We were looking for different ways, and we initiated these negotiations. No one came to us. No one said, come to our list. We initiated these negotiations knowing that we go to people who we criticized in the past. And then we had negotiations with different political parties, with leaders, contactors, intermediaries, and everyone selected a team where we have good communication, where we feel ourselves comfortable. Doesn't mean that whatever this team is doing with support, we'll be trying to influence their decisions, but at this stage it's very important. We went into politics, but they did not take us, as many mass media presented. In case with Democratic Alliance, we had long negotiations with the Hromadians'ka Pozytsia of Anatoliy Hrytsenko, and the decision about joint movement to elections was joint for us. And we realized that this political union is the correct one, responsible. For us, it was responsible because of the voters of Democratic Alliance. The voters want their political party to have power and to represent them in the parliament, because now we did not have the chance to go to elections independently, and you've heard about reasons. So we know what we need to do so that in the next elections it's much easier to get there for young people. So we understand that we need to get united into political unions. Hromadians'ka Pozytsia was the best option for us, and we go together. That's a responsible step to people who were helping Democratic Alliance, people who by their voluntary work, by their contributions, were supporting Democratic Alliance at Kyiv elections. We know that these people are now helping the ATO fighters, and we did not want to take them away from the front, and so uniting these efforts will give us more chances to get positive results. But Kivshina has a different story. Myself and Alexei Ryabchin, we graduated from foreign universities, and we are both associations of the graduates of foreign universities, and different political forces came to us. Some of them suggested cooperation, some offered us to work as experts, and the Batkivshina came with the proposal. They said they're looking for young people. That wasn't for the list initially, but just for ministries and other things. And actually, many people sent their CVs, I know more than 100. Then we had interviews, then the second round of interviews, and a week ago we did not believe that this would be possible. In this party, in this system, in this country, we were elected, and we were told 3 times before elections. Okay, from journalists. There are not so many journalists, just 3 here. And Natalka, for several years, has been involved into political activities. I am just amazed how quickly she has managed to get adapted. But as to this, whether there was such experience, such case in history, in Montgomery, in the U.S., for the first time there were actions of protest after the black woman was detained, who was sitting on the seat for white people, and it ended up in democratic rights for the whole of the country. Chrystia Freeland, who was moderating the sessions at the Yalta European Strategy, is now the MP in the Canadian Parliament. So many different things happen in the world. The President of Finland is also the former journalist. We'll try and we'll wait for your criticism. One more question. There's a comprehensive question. Many of you have some roadmap, some action plan. We would like, besides the party program, from each one of you to see the roadmap. Maybe put it on a Facebook so that half a year later we can come point something to you. We especially would like to see it from journalists. I understand what the third sector journalists will be doing, but what will the journalists be doing? It's more difficult because you go in a new sphere for you. It would be great to hear that. And those who haven't spoken maybe would take a roadmap. Let's take Vitaliy Shabunin. I'll take 1.5 minutes. Thank you for the article. I know what I will be doing. Thank you for criticism, the sense in it. What will I be doing in the parliament? I will not be working there or speaking from myself. That's the whole anti-corruption sector. That's the organization. This is Ukrainian TI and other systemic teams. What is the priority for us? Introducing the irreversibility of punishment for corruption crimes. Institution and the Corruption Bureau, illegal enrichment as a crime, and the possibility of take someone to court. Another block is transparency. Even in this parliament, with this majority, there were some draft laws not voted for the register of ownership. And the third block, the publicity, transparency of public funding. We want all the transactions, public transactions, to be online so that you can see how many of your taxes went to a certain school. There are many other plans, but without these ones, there's no sense in others. The reforms with which we are going, each one in our segments, these are not the reforms written by me or us. Behind these reforms, there are big experts. The center where I worked, I'm no longer the head of it. The center continues to working. TI is working, Chesna is working, RPR is working. We have become their lobbyists, and how this happened in life. We write laws, we agree, we explain, we have different conferences, round tables, but voting in the room, someone has to come to the speaker and say, put it for voting. We would request the MPs to do that. We had some of them. Now we'll be doing it ourselves all together. On behalf of journalists, I would like to make a reservation. Please address us as politicians. During the election campaign, at least we are politicians. What we have done as journalists, Serhiy Leshechenko asked me to remind about that, the law on access to public information. And that was political project, and we managed to get it succeeded. And we did it via Levachkin, the head of Party of Regions, Party Yefremov, and even Yanukovych. I was trolling him at the summit at Brussels, and I made him to publicly promise to approve this law, which happened. And so, in accordance with our professional activities, what priorities we see? The law on public broadcasting should become effective on the 1st of January 2015. State broadcasting is not that's impossible. The journalists who work, they're journalists, but not the promoters. In the state, we don't have money to maintain this machine. The public radio, which I founded with my 3 colleagues, there were 4 persons. Now we have, including everyone, administrative staff, 12 of us. Svoboda Radio, Liberty Radio, which has correspondents, and they produce super quality product. They have 55. The state radio company has 1,200 people. We will change that. Second, privatizing the printed publications. There should be no state-owned mass media. If the servant wants to promote himself, let them hire the PR agency. I can give advice of some phone numbers. Let them promote themselves. I do not want, as a taxpayer, to pay for that. Communal channel Kiev or the weekly Stolitsa, and I see 4 last programs, and 4 of them are about Klitschko. Shame to Klitschko, to journalists, and to the system. And transparency of media ownership. I do not believe that Guzhva is the owner of Vesti newspaper, and the law should ensure that we get the truth about owners of media. Then the elections will be different, the results of elections will be different, and the country will be different. I would like to sum it up. And I would like to say important things. First of all, you see here not registered candidates. Some are registered, but most of the candidates, these are the candidates which were elected by some congresses. Altogether, we are one big capital. And if we sum up everything that has been said, I can say that here we have experts or people with experience in election system, anti-corruption legislation, judicial reform, law enforcement bodies, reform of civil service media, human rights, financial, economic reforms, and Euro integration reforms. We agreed to draft an action plan, but we'll do that only after we are in the parliament. Then we plan to get together to agree about this action plan and decide on the spheres of responsibility. Now we think about which committees will go to in order to select this or that direction. We'll be thinking about how to have our people everywhere, so that it's not like half of our people are in anti-corruption bloc and no one is in media. That is our approach. More questions?
Добрый день, Мария Завьялова.
Voice of America. You've told about your plans for the future. I would like to see your position on the current policy of the president. What's your attitude to the negotiations with the representatives of DNR, the Donetsk People's Republic, and the Lugansk People's Republic, and do you support the peace plan of Poroshenko? Is it a question to all of you, or only to those who are in the list of Poroshenko, maybe to those who are not in the list. Yes, we do support. We do not hear. Microphone. Microphone. Let's agree about the principle. Many people who are there, and they are not members of the parties, and they do not share the position of the party from which they go to the. So just those who have their position, talking about negotiations with Lugansk and Donetsk republics. The negotiations are needed because of one reason. I was the witness of these negotiations. If we hadn't had negotiations, we wouldn't have the ceasefire, we wouldn't have people released, liberated. What I'm against is recognition, legitimization of these structures. I believe that puts us into a losing position. As to peace plan, I have been supporting this plan, and I'm supporting, irrespective of whether I was in the list or not. That's the way out of the situation that preserves the territory, and that is at least some way to come to agreement, and that does not contradict any national interest. That was stated in the beginning, and that was supported by many people, including opponents of Poroshenko, Yulia Tymoshenko as well. Any opponents to that? Who's from Donetsk Republic here? I'm a person from Donetsk. 3 months ago I came to Kiev, and I have not a very clear one-way attitude. The peace is better than war, but I cannot understand what's behind this agreement. I have friends who return to Donetsk and who feel that they can stay there, but there are those who feel that they are betrayed, and they say we will not go to that Donetsk. I would like to see the further steps on the implementation of the plan, whether it corresponds to the national interest, whether we have still same borders of Ukraine, whether this will allow people not to die and just to live there freely. Thank you. I believe that is extremely important question. I believe that's probably the most important one that we have to discuss. I can say we have people in Hromadians'ka Pozytsia. I have the education from the US and Britain. And another thing which is of importance, and I would like to address you and everyone. Look within this context, the presentation of Anatoliy Hrytsenko at Yalta European Strategy. He clearly said what is to be done. The most principal issue, the most principal task is getting back to the table of negotiations. The US and European Union, the negotiations should not be taking place in the format Ukraine-Russia or Ukraine and these formations. Second important element, and I agree with colleague, we need to hear the voice of Ukrainian Donbass. We always say, let's hear Donbass, but Donbass is not just pro-Russian separatists. These are people who were in small business, and they lost business, they lost properties. And that is the issue of principle. Some left, some are still there, and not everyone can live with the family. So the question of getting back to the table of negotiations of all the key stakeholders, global stakeholders, is important. If this doesn't happen, this will be the way in the wrong direction. We have to welcome the ceasefire, because it allows us to liberate hostages. We understand that there are few of them liberated compared to how many of them are there. But Tony Blair, also at Yalta Economic Strategy, he gave an interesting scheme of how the process of renewal of relations with territories may take place. First, understanding by both sides that there's no other way to resolve that but the negotiations. If we now hope that there is this understanding, even though many experts say that Russia needs it just to regroup, But we need to be sure that on the other side there's also understanding that there's no other way. Second, one more. Second is that after there is understanding of that, there should be the intellectual model found on the basis of which we can move forward. And I believe that's it's not non-permissible to have some special status that would legitimate these processes. Another clarifying question. No, sorry. Yeah. I'm representative of Donbas, Gorlovka UA. I studied the list and I did not see the representatives of Ukrainian Donbas, as you say. Why there are no people who for many years were opposing the Party of Regions, who go to the voluntary battalions, the journalists who left these cities? I'm interested in Donetsk, Lugansk, Gorlovka, Krasny Luch. These representatives are not in the list. In our list, we have Igor Lutsenko. He's not the representative of Donbas, but he protects the interests of Donbas, Ukrainian language. I am from Makiyivka, and I was working on other things. I'm professional in my sector. Why the criteria should be only those who were fighting with the regime? I'm not making the lists. I would like to remind that in the list of Samopomich, we have representatives of Donbas battalion. Just Semen Semenchenko is the commander of the battalion. There are activists who also have their colleagues. I know that the last weeks there were working groups who were developing the strategies of renewal of Donbass with the participation of these representatives. As to journalists who were fighting with Yanukovych, I would like to remind in May 2010, the Stop Censorship movement was set up. Mustafa, Serhiy Leshechenko, myself, we participated in that. That wasn't that enjoying. And those who were fighting, Vasyl Gatsko, who 5 days together with his deputy in the party was put to prison for the meeting at Mezhygiria in 2013. We are not academic scientists, theoreticians. That hasn't been our objective. That's the consequence of what we have been doing in times of Yanukovych and even before. Okay. The list of Poroshenko party has Mr. Firsov, who's in Mariupol now in the center of events, and he's helping military. He's working with the volunteers, Yuri Grimchak, who was organizing elections of the president in Donbass. There are candidates in majority constituencies. So I believe Irina Geraschenko, she's not from Donbass, but she has been working on that a lot. There are many people who at least know what's happening there. I will remind one fact. Out of these people who are here, half of them, their photographs are on pieces of paper that were found in Mezhygiria as people who were dangerous for Yanukovych. You remember, the journalist got these papers. I filed the claim to the European Court on Human Rights, and we are not activists. We were activists, not just in academic sense of the word. Esteemed candidates and friends, you know what's the salary of the MP? 6,500 hryvnias. How are you planning to pay your loans for apartments? How are you planning to ski? How will you live in Kiev for this money? The second question, Who will you be voting for? The Samopomich, Hromadians'ka Pozytsia. I remember how when we had Kiev elections, Mustafa and Leshechenko came out and said, let's vote for Democratic Alliance. I remember your promo during the Kiev elections when you said, let's vote for Democratic Alliance. Now you're everywhere. So there are these commanders of battalions, activists and journalists. Hold on. If I were you, I also wouldn't know who to vote for. I will not be promoting for this or that party. We are in different parties. Just select the one you like. Just be patient. They will leave. But now you have to make this choice. Not to go to election, not to vote. Then you will not have the right to demand. I don't request you to trust me or someone. Just decide who you trust, who you believe will take the country in the right directions. I don't want who these people are. We want to be these people, but we are in the list and we do not influence this big history. But next elections, please vote for us and support us. What will happen then? We will go to the parties. We'll have the problems with the leadership of the parties. That's obvious. You think we have the problem, and we believe that they have problems. They took people who they will not be controlling. And if you do not support what we say, then we will suffocate there. We will not die, we will suffocate. Support us these 5 years in the initiatives that in which you supported us in real life, in everyday life. But then vote for us during the next elections. May I say about money? Corruption is always money. That's name and money. How can we live? 6,500, that's the salary. Without taxes, it's 5,000. Then 6,500 for MPs' powers. Okay, the MP gets 12,000 hryvnias. 12,500 hryvnias to the assistant. So basically, each of us will get 11,200. 11,200. That's the money for which in Kiev, before that was 18 the MP, 18 the assistant, but now this is reduced. 12,500 is money for which you can live. You can survive. If you're married, I am lucky, it's easier because there's a wife. I mean, if the wife works. But believe me, everyone was calculating money, and we were thinking whether we can live on that. How many, the majority of MPs live, they are maintained, and if someone pays for you, you do not vote the way you should vote. You do not write the MPs' appeals or requests to the prosecutor's office. We take decision when we go there, and just like many of us, we calculated whether we and our families will be able to survive on 12,500 hryvnias. Allow me to answer that. In Chesna movement, we were talking about erogenic zone in politics, and that's money. And for us, that's a question now. I'll tell you more. We discuss it, especially in this young group. That's a problem. Each one of us, as journalists, as businessmen, as lawyers, we were getting 3, 4, 5, 6, or businessmen many more times money. And that's a serious problem, how to live now. There are several approaches. We discussed them at a systemic level first. There are some savings, but everyone was talking to families, and families said, okay, that's a sacrifice, and we're ready to help the parents, the wives, and the husbands, but it's systemic. We want to raise to get normal salary. I personally believe that was the populism to reduce the salary. We know perfectly well that there will be schemes that laundry the budget, wash out the budget. We need budget. We need to work with the bank, with corruption, to have normal money. So first of all, if we there is experience of Western countries. When Saakashvili came and he hired young people with Western education, everyone understood that a person with a Harvard degree who at the international market gets dozens of thousands of dollars, they could not work for $100. And there were Western foundations set up who were supporting those people who went to work for the government. And we are speaking openly. It's better to criticize us for wanting to get normal salary than for us saying, okay, 5,000 hryvnias, that's normal, we'll survive. I was dreaming about that money, and I will give all my life for the country, and then come to agreement inside their political forces. I support Svitlana. That is the populism to reduce salaries to MPs, and the cynical populism was the decision to reduce the salaries to assistant to MPs. I was in Germany and I was invited by one of the parliamentary parties, and I realized how they have all that they have in Germany. Each parliamentary party which is in the parliament has a foundation like Adenauer or Müller or whatever. And this foundation is financed from the state budget, 90%. And there are doctors of sciences, PhDs, and they develop the options, the draft resolutions, and they help calculate the consequences of the different drafts and decisions. And that's expensive, but that is much cheaper than populistic decisions. The MP needs high-quality assistance. How could you decrease? But the assistants, you as journalists, as the society, you need to talk about that. There should be intellectual support for the work of MPs so that they do not live in impoverishment. Very briefly, I will add, that is not just about MPs. We support what has been said before to us. We got the vacancies from the Ministry of Justice and other ministries with the requirement to have a Western degree, the experience of 3 works, and the salary 800 hryvnias a month. We realized the system is to be changed immediately. As to the salary of MPs, we discussed it and we asked this question. There are different opportunities to teach, for example, for those who have PhD, but definitely we need reform. Without reforms, without increasing the salaries, it will be impossible for wise people, educated people to go to politics. And let's talk not about the increasing of salaries of MPs, but doctors and teachers and others as well. Last question. RPR. Thank you for being ready and being responsible to leave the teams of journalists and activists and to join politics. And you know that RPR, that's 300 experts, 50 NGOs who today now are working on the roadmap of reforms for the future parliament. It will be presented on the 18th of September in Business Center, Paris. We invite you to this presentation. We have personal invitation to each one of you, and we hope that you will become the lobbyists of reforms which we will together we're trying to implement, and we've achieved a lot within these 6 months, and you will help us in political dialogue with all the parties that you represent. Thank you. Wish you success and luck. And one word from Chesna. Thank you, colleagues. I am from Chesna. Small request to our former colleagues. on behalf of Chesna movement, we want to say that we support you, and our support will be a very strict control of you, because we don't want you to turn into new Lovechkins or Balogs. A question to you, and the question, how much money you received last year, that's your tax return and your autobiography that you submit to Central Election Committee. And we also insist that you help us in our dialogue with parties so that they open their financing. On behalf of everyone, I will answer. All those who are here and the young colleagues who are planning to come, 100% will show our tax returns, even though it's not required by the legislation. And we guarantee that all next year's our tax returns will be on the website of Verkhovna Rada. Thank you. I will tell one thing to Chesna movement. I have the right. I wasn't in Chesna movement. I have everything for many years declared, and I would like to stress that we will not just make public. I remember Chesna movement, Svitlana. She came to the office of Hromadians'ka Pozytsia from Ruch Chesna, and we were talking to Anatoliy, Hrytsenko about openness of finance, and we said we will show on the website what we get, what we spent, and I believe that with this group together with Chesna movement, we could filter the list and give our conclusion who we do not want, at least to declare who we do not like. There are many strange people, especially when it comes to majority lists. So we'll be helping that. And we would like to call upon our colleagues to make it all public. And our program has the cooperation. From Ukrainian Media Crisis Center, I would like to thank you for coming here and expressing your ideas and perspectives. At 2 o'clock at night, people would call us our hotline, and the journalists were asking, is that true that you will have Nayem and others? We probably, only when Rasmussen was to be here, people were that active. So there's a lot of attention to you. From the public, from your colleagues journalists, the credit of trust, I hope you will justify, and hope to see you in Ukrainian Crisis Media Center with reports about what you have done. And the last question, where can I buy such a T-shirt? This is the business that we'll start together. Okay, we created that before the revolution. I believe Pinchuk Foundation is selling them, and the money is sent for charity. Thank you, Svitlana.